Hello all you green thumbs. I'm in the garden today. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I want to tell you something about that I am very excited about that I've recently just started doing. So I recently picked up a book that absolutely blew my mind, and it's called Landrace Gardening. And the book also made a lot of sense when I read it. It changed how I see gardening, but it also, the way he talks about gardening makes sense. And I'm going to try to explain it to you guys as someone who is trying to grow as much food as they can with little input, and someone who takes a while to understand things fully and implement them. So I just want you guys to know that I'm a slow learner. So I don't have this figured out at all. I'm just trying to get as efficient as I can at gardening. So landrace gardening is all about mimicking nature and getting as much diversity in the garden as you can. And this kale here is a great example. So in this little plot, I've got two different varieties. I've got the classic Italian Tuscan kale, absolutely love this, and the curly kale, which looks really cool. And the idea behind growing food this way is ultimately to save seeds. And as most of you already know, saving seeds that have grown in your garden, you get more locally adapted seed, and that's adapting to the rainfall, the humidity, the pests, the soil type. So the more and more you save these seeds, the more and more your seeds become adapted to where you live, and the less input you have to put in, the less you have to worry about watering, pests. So it's a really efficient way to gardening. Seed saving, in my opinion, should be the ultimate goal of gardening. And I'm trying to take this to the next step with this landrace gardening. And the way, the thoughts behind it is you want to basically allow plants to cross-pollinate with different varieties as much as you can. So in this plot, I only have two different varieties of kale. And in land racing, that's not actually much. Some varieties, like when you're doing a sweet corn, so growing corn, you might have like 30, 40 different varieties, as many as you can. And basically when these go to seed, they will cross-pollinate and create a hybrid of the two. And you might be asking, Toby, why do you want a hybrid of the two? Well, there are certain traits in the curly kale and the Tuscan kale that might complement each other. So for example, curly kale, from my understanding, is very good at repelling caterpillars and insects because of how curly it is. It's hard for them to crawl on it, compared to Tuscan kale, which has a much nicer flavor. And so the combination of those two creates a new kale that can have better traits. And the more and more varieties you have, so for example, over here, this is a good example, carrots. I put about 6 different varieties of carrots in here. And I had purple carrots, orange, all sorts, and I found that none of the purple carrots actually popped up. But that's okay, because I have heaps of different types, and you can see they're doing pretty well, they're growing. And a good analogy is they've found that when you have a highway built between a forest and you have two different types of forest with different animals, you get this thing called inbreeding depression. So you only have that certain type of animal located in that area, and they can't go across to the other side. And so you get the inbreeding depression, which is the bad traits of that animal become more prominent. So it's very, very important to try and get as much diversity and crossbreeding as possible. And I've done that as much as I can in the garden. I've got only about 3 different varieties of beetroot in here. I've got about 7 different varieties of cabbage here that are starting to pop up in little rows. I've got probably 4 different varieties of snow peas that are going to flower. And so you basically select for the traits that you like the best. So another example over here, I have this beefsteak tomato that's growing really nicely. And I also have a bunch of cherry tomatoes that are all going to flower. And personally, I love beefsteak tomatoes. I find them much nicer to eat. And so I will most likely save the seeds from those and plant them again. Cherry tomatoes, I'll keep them going because here in the subtropics, they grow very well. It gets very humid here. Tomatoes don't love humidity. So I'll keep a bit of both, but I can choose what traits I like the best in my plants because of how many different varieties I have. My very weedy corn patch, you can see some corn starting to pop up all over the place. I probably have about 20 to 25 different varieties of corn in this bed. And to be honest, I don't know which ones didn't pop up because I just chucked a bunch down, and whatever survives, survives, and whatever dies doesn't make it. So it's survival of the fittest. And ultimately, the plants that do the best in my garden, in my conditions here, will survive, and I'll save those seeds. So over time, I get plants that adapt to the climate here in Queensland. So something I'm really excited about here that you can actually see in action right now is two different plants. So here you have tatsoi, which is an Asian green, and Chinese mustard, and they're both in the same family. So to actually cross-pollinate different plants, they must be in the same family. So for example, spinach cannot cross-pollinate with Chinese mustard because they're in different families. And you can see they go into flower. The bees are absolutely loving them, absolutely covered, and it smells amazing. And what's going to happen here is there will be a cross-pollination of these two plants. So Chinese mustard, a bit spicy, peppery taste. Tatsoi has a kind of crunchy, spinach-like taste. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be a combination of those two plants. The Chinese mustard here grew like an absolute weapon. It didn't water it, didn't do anything to it. It absolutely blew up, and I had so many leaves that I had to give most of it to the chickens. Whereas I prefer the flavor of the tatsoi. Has a much more kind of edible taste, I feel like. So those will combine and create a new plant, which I'm really excited about. So same thing with the radish here, probably put about 5 different varieties in, and the majority that popped up was this French breakfast variety. And the others just didn't really make it. There was a few scarlet globes, which are more of a circular radish, but I also prefer the French breakfast. I find it easier to cut. It's more like a carrot. You can kind of just slice it compared to the circular. It's a bit harder to cut. That's just preference. And so that's something I can select for. So already the French breakfast is growing the best. I'm going to save those seeds, and I like the way it tastes and looks in the kitchen. I'm also really excited about this pumpkin here that I planted with the corn. And I probably have about 8 different varieties of pumpkin. And pumpkin's a really cool one to landrace because you can actually see like this visual different hybrid when you do save the seeds and plant them. Because the way the landrace works, you don't immediately see the hybrid plant because you have to wait till you save the seeds from the plant that's cross-pollinated, and then you don't really know what you're going to get. So it's a bit of a lucky draw. You could get this crazy colorful pumpkin, or you could get an absolute dud. So you just kind of have to experiment. So they're doing really nicely. They'll grow with the corn and do like a 3 sisters method. And I'm doing the same thing with my chickens here. So these chickens are called Quambies, and they were bred in, I'll see if I can get a video. There they are. I'll get that in there. They're pretty cute, and they're getting pretty big now. They're about a month and a half old. And the Quambies were bred in Tasmania, and they're multi-purpose birds, so they can be used for both meat and eggs, which is my goal, to start processing my meat eventually. But those chickens are bred for Tasmanian conditions, which is quite different to Queensland. Queensland's a very humid, tropical. Tasmania is very temperate, cold. And so my thinking behind this is that I want to get more different types of chickens in this flock and let them breed and select for the traits that I like the best. So it might be visual, like I like the look of the chickens. I might like a white chicken better, or a black chicken better, or I might find that there's more meat on a certain chicken, or I like the color of an egg. And so I have this choice between what I like, but also you're selecting for chickens that just do the best here in the hot conditions. They don't need to be fed as much. But I really like the Quambi chicken as a base for the genetics, because the guy who started them took about 7 years to get it right. So he spent a lot of time trying to get this breed perfect to lay about 300 eggs a year and have good meat quality and be able to forage on their own in nature and not need much attention. So I really like that. But once again, diversity, diversity, diversity. I want to try and get as much as I can in the garden so I don't have to worry about plants trying to be coddled and looked after and needing attention. They can look after themselves, and also trying to get as much food as possible, because I found that in a lot of different gardening practices, like permaculture, for example, standing for permanent agriculture, you don't actually get that much food, I've found personally. And I feel like this way of gardening, where you have garden beds compact and you rotate plants through constantly, you have lots of food to feed your family and friends. So if you guys have found a way of gardening that is natural to how nature works and gets you a lot of food, drop a comment. I'd love to know how you guys are growing food, because I think everyone should be growing at least one plant in their backyard. So let's have a look at my other chickens. Okay, so here they are. These are 2 or 3 days old, I believe, and there's 5 of them. And they're a mixture of a few different breeds. So there's some blue Australorp over there. I think that's a well summer. Don't know what that little grey one is. And there's some white chicken there. I think that's a Sussex chicken. I don't know what sex these are, so they could all be roosters or all be hens. I prefer hens just because you're meant to have 1 rooster for every 10 hens to keep the rooster happy, which I find a bit funny. But basically I'm going to let these breed with the Quambies just to get some interesting genetics in there and see what type of chickens I get. They're also absolutely adorable. This one is probably my favorite color. He's got like a bit of, looks like he's got eyeliner on his face. So cute. And they just fall asleep so easily. I also want to show you guys this, it's really exciting. So I went a bit crazy and bought probably 15 different varieties of pumpkin from all over Australia. All different shapes, colors, sizes. And I don't have enough room to actually grow these, so I'll just keep them until I have some space. But that's, yeah, a lot of diversity. Same thing here. These are probably 10 different varieties of beans. Most of them are climbing beans. And I will sow those and let them grow up the corn as that 3 sisters method. And the world has so many different climates and rainfall and humidity and elevation and soil types and pests. And so the plants that thrive in my garden might not thrive in yours. And the goal is to basically get plants that love where you live. And most of the seeds that you guys buy, they grow very far away from where you live in very different climates. And so I think this is the way to get the best food security and make sure you get yummy, tasty, little input food as possible. And if you guys have any questions, please drop a comment. And also if you guys think I could do something differently, let me know, because I love growing food and I hope that my passion for it also inspires some of you to do the same. All right, I'm just going to record another intro because my brain stopped working because I was so excited and I just couldn't process the words. But thank you for watching, you guys. You're amazing. And any questions, any comments, queries, drop them below. I'll see you guys in the next video.